Well, welcome to our film celebrating 70 years of the National Health Service. It's become Britain's most venerated institution, and rightly so. And I can certainly remember my parents and grandparents telling me about life before the NHS and all the worries and concerns they had about illness or injury. And the NHS has made such a huge difference to people's lives since those days. But it's not just about celebrating the past, it is about looking forward to the challenges that we face. And over the last few years, there have been huge advances in medical science, and we've seen the great differences those have made. But we're also looking forward to what we can do over the next 70 years. But I think the most important component part of our NHS and of Oxleas is our people. People with the right values, people who care, people who are highly professional, and those little acts of kindness that every day make a difference to our patients. And that's one of the things I'd like to celebrate and think about how we can continue as we look forward to underpin those great values of the National Health Service and our trust, and make sure that we're going to celebrate a continuing outstanding organisation in 70 years' time.
This leaflet is coming through your letterbox one day soon. Or maybe you've already had your copy. Read it carefully. It tells you what the new National Health Service is and how you can use what it offers. Hospitals and specialist services, medicines, drugs and appliances, care of the teeth, care of the eyes, maternity services, home health services. The new scheme starts on July the 5th. But there's one thing you should do at once. Choose your doctor now. That's most important. Study the leaflet, then keep it by you. You'll need it for reference.
We use that three-letter acronym NHS, but that short group of letters just summarises so much of values, of health, of well-being, but equally the people within our NHS who make it so special and deliver that care and that kindness when you're feeling rubbish, you're feeling down in the dumps, you're scared, and how they can give you that reassurance as well as the care that you need to get you better, to remain positive and get through.
I came into nursing because I really wanted to care about people. Started off as a cleaner, went into nursing homes and finally came into nursing the Brook Hospital, which is sadly now shut.
I've always wanted to be a nurse, really, to have patient contact. As soon as I finished my nurses training, I went straight into the community because it's what I prefer.
I started as a healthcare assistant when I was 17, when I got refused entry to medical school because I didn't have the right exams. So I went off and did HCA work for a couple of years.
I was taken on as a care assistant, and then I became an occupational therapy assistant.
I started in support work, having met the learning disability service. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a rock star. That didn't pan out very well. Playing the guitar, still try and do that now, but I thought, you know, I quite like working with people with a learning disability.
I started to work at Goldie Hospital, so part of Oxleas NHS Trust. As a nursing assistant, that was a hospital for mentally subnormal children. So just in terms of the language you used, it's changed a lot.
I came at the age of 16. I had to get permission to leave school early to start. I was quite interested in the money. I was on £4, 1 and 6 a week then. So, you know, big bucks.
My interview to become a nurse, I came up to Greenwich District Hospital, what it was at that time, and I was 17, and my mum came with me, which we'd think quite odd now if your mum came with you for an interview. So she sat outside and I went in and they asked me all these questions, and are we the only hospital you've applied to? And I said, of course you are. And of course they weren't. So they said, how are your family about you being a nurse? Oh, they'd love me being a nurse. Oh, let's bring your mum in. So they brought my mum into the interview. And I was petrified that she would say that I'd applied to another hospital and then, you know, what would happen. But she didn't.
I mean, looking back on it, it's extraordinary that I walked into a job. I'd never done anything like that before. I was introduced to a group of adults with profound learning disabilities. Most of them had great difficulty in communicating their needs, feelings, what they were thinking. And I was just told to get on with it. Do stuff with them.
So fearfully, I did a week's voluntary work in a day service for adults with learning disabilities and challenging behaviour. And after a week of going out for days and driving a minibus and doing all those sorts of things, I thought this was great fun. And I fell in love with the work. And I've been doing it ever since, for 25 years.
Somebody had dug out somewhere one of the original recruitment videos for the NHS, and rather amazingly it had a bit of footage about in a nursing home, and it had Matron delivering breakfast in bed to some of the student nurses. I think we probably struggled to actually find a student nurse who had had breakfast in bed delivered by Matron at that time. And I have actually suggested it to Jane, as our wonderful Director of Nursing, as a way of possibly overcoming some of our recruitment difficulties for Band 5 nurses, but she hasn't taken it up on me yet.
Meet two of the town's hospital nurses, Mara Glossop from Orpington and Durham's Gladys Barker. Today is their day off. They share a home away from the hospital. Both have their own front door key. Their leisure hours are kept free from the hospital atmosphere. In the morning, still off duty till 10 o'clock, they have breakfast in bed brought in by the maid. Matron Burland knows that all these homely comforts assure her of a contented staff, and happy nurses speed the recovery of the patients.
What the film did communicate was a tremendous sense of excitement at the time about the vision of the NHS, and just how new and amazing it was to think about offering health and access to healthcare for all, whoever you were, regardless of how old, how young you were, how much money you earned, your level of disability, and the film really got that across.
Nurse, I want you.
Nurse Edwards, can you go to her? Dr. Clark's waiting. I don't suppose he'll mind.
Yes, our nurses are busy and overworked because there aren't enough of them. Many hospitals have closed wards because of that. Who will help? You will? Good. But you can't like that, you know. First, you must learn nursing. It isn't difficult. While you're learning, you're paid. The job is interesting and there's plenty of companionship. 1 day off a week and 4 weeks paid holiday a year. And the most satisfying job of all, healing.
So working at Goldie Lee, I was inspired really by one of the staff nurses, and she really was quite strict, to do my nurse training. So she was a great role model, a bit of a stickler for detail, but I thought, yes, I'd like to be like her.
The sister on the ward, my first ward, I said was like a Dalek, because she moved silently in her cape and pointed a lot at things. But she very much was a very scary but very nurturing lady, actually, and it was a privilege to work there.
So I worked at the Brook Hospital, I worked on the neuro ward. Sisters are really strict, which I really liked. Everything was, and I actually managed like how they do now, I'm quite strict.
Very nice.
Yes.
What's your name, Band? Edith Gold. K046718. That's lovely.
With a staff nurse present, Fiona gives the injection. In this way, classroom theory and practice come together.
Look at your toes for us.
One of the main things I think that is different now is that the rapport between the students and the newly qualified and the sisters and the matrons is that everyone's more friendly, everyone's more approachable. You can ask people why you're doing that procedure and you're not told because I told you so.
We lived in the nursing home. That was an event. So the nursing home was just up the hill from the hospital. So you had, we had Mrs. H on the door, and she was a strong lady. Nobody got through that door without signing in and signing out. So boyfriends were, interestingly, got in and out of the nursing home. We used to have the night porter would come and knock on your door if they thought somebody was in your room, and they were meant to leave. Some did and some didn't.
Okay, you're in D. That's on the second floor. Now, would you like to just sign, just as you have the keys? Right. Just the next one down. Yes. Yeah, fine. That'll be some bedroom. Oh, look. Well, I came here on Sunday, you know, to move into the nursing home. It was pouring with rain and I felt so fed up, and my little room had nothing on the walls, you know, but there's other people there as well, you know, in the same situation. I think this is the start of your new career sort of thing. I was petrified. Absolutely petrified. I thought, oh, I'll never get used to it. I'll be lost. But I mean, you soon get used to it, you know, you find out where everything is. That's great. Yeah, wondering if I was going to meet, you know, people that I was going to get on with and whether I was going to like it. It looks a bit enormous and, you know, impersonal, but you find out everybody's friendly. So things inside to put over the...
I was always getting in trouble on the wards with my ward sister. I didn't have a lot of common sense or initiative. I was always doing things like leaving the milk to boil for 24 hours and coming into a kitchen on fire.
When we first came into nursing, you'd never seen a part of a body, you know, so it was a little daunting to see parts of bodies that you'd never seen before.
Christmas Eve, 1979, working in the crisis I team as a student. And the doctor that was on call and the nurse specialist were both smoking cigarettes as they were trying to help a lady whose nose was bleeding. And I still have by to this day, and I tell the students to now, you know, think, my gosh, how things have changed.
Certainly a speeding recovery at London Seymour Hall were a group of present-day Florence Nightingales, and they look great. The ladies in white were showing off the latest styles in wardwear at the nursing exhibition. Some of the uniforms hail from America. Dr. Kildare ain't seen nothing yet. These girls are real temperature raisers. Definitely hot stuff.
We wore a lovely uniform, with a hat, which was pointless, apart from that you knew who everybody was by the colour of their hat. And the sisters on the wards wore a frilly cap, so that you knew that they really were in charge, and they wore a lovely cape.
I trained in the days where we wore hats and we wore belts, and you wore different colours for different years, and the big thing was the move up to from first year to second year to third, and then third to staff.
You're in PTA to start with, and the first day they ask you to make your frilly hat, which has got to be just so, and we had 13 tucks at the back. It had to be just so, it had to pass muster.
Nurses wore hats, doctors wore white coats, and there used to be a separate eating area in the canteen for the consultants, which had a screen, and they had waitress service. It was the same hospital food, but they had waitress service.
When we came into what was PTS, that was our pre-training school, we got our uniform and you got your belt and you got your name badge, which was lovely, but you went out to the ward and everybody thought you were a nurse. And I remember going on to a paediatric ward, and we had to check the pulse of the patients. Now you think that's quite easy, just holding a pulse. I could not find a pulse, and it took me hours probably to find a pulse.
And attach that onto the tubing. Put the fluid all the way through the tubing until it comes to the end. We attach a label to that to allow us to know what's inside there. During her 3-year training, the nurse is taught to take an increasing role in the nursing management of the patient, so that when she's qualified, she can take on full responsibility.
She's a decision maker, and I think as time goes by, is becoming more of a decision maker about their care, and she's responsible for the outcome of the care.
And then you were on the ward in your uniform with your badge, which said nurse each day, and really didn't know very much at all. It was very much learning on the job. seeing how your senior staff around you worked and related to patients, and then you'd be given a couple of patients to look after.
Bexley Hospital was a large 52 ward institution that had its own factory and orchards that were farmed by the patients at Bexley Hospital. There were social clubs, shops, social clubs staff as well, such that a lot of the staff there were as institutionalised as the patients.
In the days of the mainly locked wards had gone, I mean, we had the Mental Health Act in 1959, which meant a lot of changes took place.
Cane Hill Mental Hospital releases 53-year-old Mrs. Harriet Thornton after 3.5 years detention as a certified mental case. Public opinion is beginning to wonder how many more patients in hospitals up and down the country have been wrongly certified because someone wanted them out of the way. Labour MP Norman Dodds on the right leaves Parliament with Mrs. Thornton after hearing the Minister of Health declare her a free woman. Dr. Johnson, Conservative MP, has joined forces with Mr. Dodds to fight Britain's chaotic lunacy laws. Dr. Johnson was himself wrongly certified 5 years ago as a result of a criminal plot. Mrs. Thornton, would you tell us how you came to be certified?
I don't know. I haven't the faintest idea. Nobody gives you any explanation. 3 men came into the house one morning. My husband let them in, and they told me that they had a magistrate's order to take me away for arrest to hospital. Of course, I was terribly flabbergasted. I told them I was sane, but of course I had enough sense to say that I would go quietly, because if I hadn't, they would have taken me by force. There's no doubt about that. I had no choice.
So memories of working at Bexley Hospital. I remember working at nights, because normally you're working on a ward with sort of charge nurse or a sister and staff nurses. So on nights you was often just you as a student with one other member of staff, so that was quite scary.
When I was a volunteer when I was 16, 17, I came to Bexley Hospital. So it would have been around about 1979, thereabouts. And we were sixth formers, and we came to take patients to Songs of Praise. And we'd take patients from the older adult wards to the Heather Club. And the Heather Club was a social club for patients, and it was a thriving community. People could get tea and chat, and they'd smoke down there, etc. And we would sing hymns with the patients. And there was one particular patient who, when we had sung the hymn, would always sing Amen very loudly, on her own, and out of tune. And as a 16-year-old, it was all I could do to hold the laughter in.
Oh, we had the main hall in the evenings, used to show fairly up-to-date films. I mean, this was a massive hall, and the staff would go up in the balcony. But you take almost the whole ward sometimes down, and they'd all be almost full up.
What sort of films were shown?
The latest ones that were going at the time. I mean, they were new.
Working on the locked ward, which was E1, and you also had stories about how it was very rough and very violent, and it was actually one of the places I really enjoyed working, mainly because the staff ratio was really good. You could sit with people one-to-one and talk and spend time with them, because there were so many nurses on the ward. So it wasn't as brutal and as aggressive as it was talked about. It was actually a place where you could spend time doing what you were supposed to do, which is talking to people, helping people, which was really good.
To a famous Bond Street beauty parlour come a bunch of pretty nurses. They're greeted by director Miss Eleanor MacDonald. And why not? Except that a nurse's salary doesn't usually run to Bond Street prices. The answer? They're here not as customers, but as students. Miss MacDonald personally teaches a new group of half a dozen every month. It's an official part of their training, and a great victory for Miss MacDonald, who has been maintaining for years that beauty treatment could play a big part in bringing women hospital patients back to health. First hospital to accept her offer of free help was Goodmay's in Essex, where she was proved triumphantly right.
I think over the years, from my experience, things has changed considerably with the care in the community coming in and the institutions such as Bexley Hospital closing down.
My first person I was a key worker for, I asked him if he wanted to come into his care review, and he said yes, I'd love to. And I asked the team, they said no. I said, well, it's about him. It's his meeting, so they couldn't say no then. But then also I asked if he could come to the house meetings. They put a stop to that. They said no, let's go one step too further.
My first job was being in charge of the tea trolley, which I thought this was a great job actually, because you've got the trolley and you've got the teapot, which actually was massive with 2 handles, and 25 bags went into that teapot. And you set off, and it was 10 o'clock was tea and 3 o'clock was tea, I think. And you go round, and then you get to the end, and then this lovely lady in the bed would say, "Could I have mine weak?" And you'd take the lid off and you'd look in and you think, oh, there's an inch of water which is brown, brackish brown, with 25 tea bags floating in it. So you'd pour her half a cup of tea and half a cup of hot water, and she'd say, "Oh, it's lovely, nurse." And you think, oh.
I remember the first time I made my first ever cup of tea as an HCA, and I made it, and everyone took a swig and went, "Oh, Nats, we." I've never made one at home, but I realised at that point that obviously the NHS is fueled on tea, so I got better at making cups of tea.
Working in an IT department, we had people that would come in, burst into the office, and this was their home. This is where they lived, but we saw it as our office, and we were being invaded, and people would either tear paper off the walls or do it, and I was very curious about why, how. And we were told to shout at people with just some awful attitudes. So it was a really, really positive and interesting learning curve, understanding behaviour, meeting some psychologists, meeting some fellow nurses, and understanding how people ticked.
One of the things I used to enjoy was taking patients out of the hospital because, as I said, you'd spend a week living here and working here, but patients sometimes lived here for most of their adult life. So I remember going to the coast on trips with the wards, and little things like going to Bexley Heath on a bus with a patient to get them out of their environment where they're stuck here sort of day in, day out, was something I really enjoyed and really remember.
Thinking about what did I like best, I think my time as a midwife, I think that was very special. I think bringing babies into the world is very special. It is nerve-wracking. We had less technology. We had the pinard, so you listened in. You didn't have the monitors telling you what was going on. But you had to do your 40 births before you could be qualified as a midwife. I had to do my last birth when I was 38 weeks pregnant to have my son, so it wasn't that easy, but we had her, and that was lovely.
It's not a new block of luxury flats. It's luxury applied to a new field, a hospital. The High Wycombe General sets a standard today which the whole country will strive after tomorrow. A bridge connects the old hospital with the new block, which has cost £1,800,000. The spaciousness of the entrance and reception hall will give patients confidence that here they are meeting medical science 1967 style, equipped as it should be. Gone is the old atmosphere of healing on the cheap. From the new wards, the patient's choice goes on his own numbered menu card to the kitchen, where his order receives individual attention. There's good reason for High Wycombe General being called a 5-star luxury hospital. It's part of a new approach to the art and science of getting sick people well. Instant communication with every patient comes through the central panel, where a Nigerian nurse was working when the pictures were taken. Wanting a glass of water, Charlie Barnaby merely had to ask for it on the intercom, and Nurse Akudu at once saw on the panel the ward and bed from which the call came. All the patients say what good nurses the girls from the Commonwealth countries always are. Nurse Akudu went to get that glass of water. Men and women come to hospital to get well. Their families want them home again as soon as possible. This kindly, very human treatment is the way back to health.
Earlier this year, I was diagnosed with lung cancer, something that came as quite a shock to me as a non-smoker, not realising just how many people who don't smoke get lung cancer. And I think seeing our NHS at its very best, of the kindness, the care, the compassion, and the absolute professionalism that I saw and experienced. You know, I had NHS support from start to finish, from diagnosis to getting me back to where I am now, being positive and looking forward to the future, looking beyond cancer, but equally being very humbled by the amazing people that looked after me all the way through that process and will continue to look after me for my regular checkups that I'll now have in the months ahead.
I went to a COPD clinic just to see what we did and who went and what sorts of things people were able to do. And I met a woman there. For her, the most important thing was that she needed to be able to walk enough to get back on the bus so she could go and visit her grandchildren. And for her, that was the point. Her flow rates could have been whatever you want. But working with dedicated nurses and other clinicians in Oxleas, she managed to get herself to a position where she could get back on the bus, go and see her grandchildren and come home again. That's really what it's about. That's what community health really delivers for people, things that are really important to them, and that's what Oxleas is best at.
It's all about inclusion now instead of exclusion, which I think is great, and that's some of the growth the NHS has done over the last 70 years and beyond, I think.
We all know the NHS is facing many challenges, but us as members of staff are striving to still provide really gold standard care to our patients, and that's what we want to do. We want to continue to be able to do that, and with the right support we can still continue to provide that gold standard care for our patients.
With the NHS you have the opportunity to advance in your career, to be able to work independently as well as working as a team as well, and make friends and to be able to actually grow in what you like to do.
I believe in the NHS and I love the fact that it's free at the point of delivery. It's free for anybody. It doesn't matter who you are, what culture you come from, what level of society you come from, so it's free. That's really, really important.
So it's been a great career. I've really enjoyed it. I mean, I think the NHS is a wonderful employer, and looking back on it, I've had so many opportunities in different ways in the NHS.
Everybody wanted you to be a good nurse, everybody wanted you to be a good midwife, and I think that's something that the NHS has always had, that support of everybody.
Nobody knows everything. You
No.
can always learn from somebody. I can learn from a student, from anybody else. I think it's a job for people who love people.
We joined nursing to be nurses to care for people and give them the best care. And although things have changed and procedures have changed, policies have changed, at the end of the day, if you're a nurse, that's what you're there for, to care about people. And that's why the NHS keeps going.
My motivation being a nurse is purely making people who are vulnerable, who are not well, and you see a smile on their face. So it motivates me quite a lot. You're making somebody who's not well and you can see them happy, getting better.
I think it's an amazing opportunity to be able to help somebody, people that are vulnerable, people that are in need, and especially in community nursing. You know, we get invited into people's home where personally I think that they get better the quickest in their own environment. So it's just an amazing opportunity.
As time goes on and life experience and family members using the NHS and sort of children being born and family members dying, passing away, you realise what the NHS is about, where you see people are seen at their lowest ebb, the most vulnerable, and it's such a good service, and you don't realise it when you're younger, what it actually means to people, how, you know, from doctors, from nurses, from people cleaning the ward to make it safe for you, from canteen staff, people doing bloods, the amount of good work that goes on in the NHS, I think is something really to be proud of.
The most pleasurable times have always been going on patients' journeys with them, be it through them getting better or sadly coming towards the end of their lives and reflecting and being in that privileged position to be with them and their families.
I feel lucky to be a doctor in the NHS with that opportunity to see stuff as it happens. I'm already looking to the next 10 years and saying, what will I have seen? And I talk to colleagues and trainees and I say, in 10 years' time, you'll look back and you'll be like, oh my gosh, this didn't happen 10 years ago.
I've been a manager here in Oxleas for about 4 years now, senior manager, which has been I don't know, I think it's probably one of the best jobs of my life, actually. I couldn't have been happier. I've got the most wonderful team around me and most wonderful colleagues.
I was really proud to be a nurse. I worked hard to get there. I'd left school back in the day when you didn't have to have an education, you could go and get a job. But I'd always wanted to be a nurse, and I didn't get my qualifications, but I worked hard to get there.
So I've completely retained my belief in the NHS and in public service. In the job that I do at the moment, I try and hold on to that. I try and remember that at the end of it, all that we do, there is a patient, a service user.
If there's one thing that struck me pretty much wherever I go, is the great passion of staff within Oxleas to do the best that they can for their patients. And I can say that is a common theme running throughout all that we do. People really, really try their utmost best to give their patients the best service and treatment that they can get.
So 70 years on, when I think about have we achieved that vision that was in that recruitment film, and I think the answer is absolutely a resounding yes, I think we have.
You've got one there.
In psychiatry in particular, we do a lot of big groups, just starting off with fairly basic things in cooking and household things, and then gradually building it up so that they are able to look after themselves. The nurses come to us to work as part of the team. The idea of not wearing uniform is really to try and prevent a barrier between patients and staff.
Come on, I've got orders to pull your leg and I don't know which one. You don't flinch when you nip it. What are you, 15? You're making him blush.
I see what they mean now, yeah.
Yeah. So, well, if you put on that ring now, and if you put it on slowly, so I'll cook.
3.
Yes, that'd be fine.
Nice like that. No,
You think you can do
pick
it?
it up, bring it here.
Cut this end of the bit off.
It's
That's right. You can't. Never mind.
I've seen so many different nurses going through, from students right the way back up to being band 7s, team leads now. It's such a great time. Really enjoying it, and still really enjoy working for the NHS.
My mum always says that I always wanted to be a nurse ever since she could remember, or I could actually speak. And it's been a fantastic career, and I'm really pleased that I wanted to do it, and it's been everything I wanted it to be.
And I've been given the opportunity to do my training, to advance in the career, and to be able to pass this on to the patients that I look after. And I've made great friends, and so I've enjoyed working with the NHS as a nurse.
I think you get all the different professionals all put together, but you sort of see our yellow badges and you know you're it's like part of the Oxleas family.
And it's just not mental health, it's the community as well, the children's services which they provide. So they're doing
amazing job.
And
we're just a tiny part behind the scenes.
Yes, and that's where we like to remain.
Yeah, but they do out there, they're amazing. Yes.
I'm really proud of the work we do, and I'm more proud of the work that our colleagues do. I see on a day-to-day basis, people on the wards in the community, and it's such a good service that we do, and I think it's world class, and we should be really proud of it.
We've seen a lot of changes in the National Health Service over the last 70 years, but I guess for me the one thing that hasn't changed is the drive and the passion and commitment of nurses who give their all in sometimes very challenging situations.
So I think we're on a journey, and it's been a really great journey, and I can't say how grateful I am for the opportunity to be part of this.
I've always enjoyed the work, enjoyed the people I've worked with for the most part, and it's been a lifetime's work, really.
So I remember really happy times, lovely happy times.
I'm very proud that I've been in the NHS for the last 40 years. My daughter, who's now a nurse, said that I hadn't encouraged her to be a nurse. I think I had encouraged her to be a nurse, but maybe not to be a manager. I think being a nurse is very, very special. And she loves it, and I'm glad that she loves it, and I'm sure it'll be a career that she will love for the rest of her life as well.
Every day I still learn something new, and I still love coming to work. I still love what we do. Very proud to be a nurse, very proud to work for the NHS.
I've never been one for favourites, so I can't really think of a genuinely favourite memory of the NHS. It's just basically, I've loved all the work that I've done in it, if you like. So it's more of a general warm, fuzzy glow when I think about the last sort of, 15, 16 years that I've been a doctor in the NHS. It's great.
And I'll be really sad to go. I'll miss colleagues. I know lots of people across the organisation, and there probably isn't a building that I'll go to where I won't know somebody there. So I shall miss that over the coming years, but I think I'm ready to move on now.
I'm incredibly proud of working in the NHS, and I feel I'm playing my small part, along with many millions of others, about making sure it goes from strength to strength for the next 70 years.
I feel a tremendous sense of pride working for the NHS, actually. It's a pretty amazing beast. Like your kids can drive you up the wall, sometimes the NHS can drive you up the wall, but you still love them and you're still very proud of them. And I suppose, I feel a bit like that with the NHS. There are tremendous frustrations, but overall, to have something free at the point of delivery that supports the most vulnerable people in our society, irrespective of how much money you have in the bank, and where you come from, what you look like, how you behave, all these things. The NHS is there, and I think that's just precious and should remain so.
It is that compassion, that kindness, the utter professionalism that I have very firmly felt and seen and experienced close at hand over recent months that is just so striking, and I think is absolutely the hallmark of our NHS and is very much at the heart of the values of our NHS, something that we should really cherish, something at this time that we're marking the 70th anniversary, something that we should celebrate. Celebrating the people, celebrating those who work within our NHS, who do so much good and make it the special organisation that it is.
Really love my job, love my team. Got a very good team, haven't we?
We have.
Yeah, I'm very proud to be a nurse. It's a bit like that. But I am.